Welcome to the Human Meme Podcast. I'm AI David Bowles, and along with our Crackbot AI research team, we're going to discuss today Unraveling the Roots, how jazz, blues, and rock and roll redefine the rhythms of rebellion. And we will endeavor to embark together on a musical journey through the intricate connections and evolutions of these seminal genres. This exploration is not merely an academic foray into the notes and rhythms that define jazz, blues, and rock and roll. It is a deep dive into the very essence of these styles and their profound impact on cultural and social landscapes. Each genre, while distinct in its sound and origin, shares a common thread of rebellion and expression, weaving a rich tapestry of musical innovation and cultural transformation. Let's delve into this symphony of sounds, exploring the confluence and divergence of these genres that have shaped not only music, but also the narrative of societal change. Jazz, the grand architect of this musical conversation, emerged in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. It's a genre often characterized by its complex rhythms, improvisation, and a unique blend of cultural influences, predominantly African American in origin. The roots of jazz lie deep in the blues, a genre that itself originated from African spirituals, work songs, and folk music. Blues is the soul laid bare, with its expressive scales and emotive storytelling, often channeling the struggles and joys of life. Rock and roll, a rebellious child of the 20th century, drew heavily from both jazz and blues. It simplified some of the complexities of jazz, injected the raw emotion of the blues, and added a backbeat that made it irresistibly danceable. Rock and roll is often seen as a distillation of these earlier genres, made more accessible to a wider audience. The common touchstones among these genres are evident. Each of them, in their essence, is a form of storytelling. They share a DNA of rhythm, blues scales, and a penchant for improvisation. Their themes often revolve around personal struggles, societal issues, and the human experience. However, their divergences are just as notable. Jazz, especially in its earlier forms, prioritized instrumental virtuosity and complex arrangements. It was music that demanded attention and intellectual engagement. As it evolved, it splintered into numerous subgenres, from the swing of Duke Ellington to the bebop of Charlie Parker, each with its own distinct flavor. Blues, in contrast, has always been more about the soulful expression of emotion. It's more straightforward in its musical structure, often based around a 12-bar chord progression, but it's the emotional weight of the lyrics and the expressive bends and slides of the guitar that define its essence. Rock and roll took these elements and amplified them quite literally. It was louder, bolder, and more rhythmically driven. Artists like Chuck Berry and Elvis Presley were not just musicians, but cultural icons who changed the landscape of music and society. The assumptions about these genres often oversimplify their relationships. It's commonly thought that rock and roll directly evolved from blues, which in turn came from jazz. While there's truth in this, it's a reductionist view. The reality is more of a complex interplay, with artists often crossing genres and being influenced by a myriad of sources. In their evolution, these genres have continued to branch out and influence countless other styles. Jazz gave birth to fusion, smooth jazz, and even influenced classical music. Blues morphed into rhythm and blues, which itself is a direct ancestor of rock, soul, and even hip-hop. Rock and roll branched into everything from heavy metal to punk to indie rock. The wild variants in each genre are testaments to their adaptability and the creativity of their artists. Jazz has seen the avant-garde explorations of Ornette Coleman, the fusion experiments of Miles Davis, and the modern interpretations of Kamasi Washington. Blues has ranged from the acoustic Delta blues of Robert Johnson to the electric Chicago blues of Muddy Waters, and into contemporary artists like Gary Clark Jr. Rock and roll has perhaps the broadest spectrum, from the psychedelic rock of the 1960s to the grunge of the 1990s and beyond. The relationship between jazz, blues, and rock and roll is a rich tapestry of influence, innovation, and interconnection. Each genre, while distinct, shares a lineage that speaks to the universal language of music and its profound ability to express the human condition. The evolution of these styles is not just a musical journey but a reflection of cultural and societal shifts, a dance of tradition and innovation that continues to enchant and evolve. As we continue this musical odyssey, exploring the intricate tapestry woven by jazz, blues, and rock and roll, it's crucial to delve deeper into the cultural and historical contexts that shaped these genres. This exploration is not just about notes and rhythms, but about the voices and stories they carry, stories that resonate through time and continue to influence modern music. In understanding the evolution of these genres, we must acknowledge the socio-cultural environments in which they thrived. Jazz, born in the melting pot of New Orleans, was a product of cultural fusion, where African rhythms met European harmonies, creating a dynamic and evolving art form. It was a sound of liberation and expression for African American communities, a voice in a society that often tried to silence them. As jazz spread through America, it mirrored the complexities of the American experience, adapting and absorbing local influences from the Kansas City swing to the sophisticated sounds of New York's bebop. Blues, often considered the emotional backbone of both jazz and rock and roll, has its roots in the Deep South. It was the music of African American sharecroppers, expressing the sorrows of life but also offering a form of catharsis. The blues scale, with its flatted notes, is a direct connection to African musical heritage. As blues musicians migrated to urban centers like Chicago and Memphis, they electrified their sound, giving rise to a more aggressive and urban blues style, which would heavily influence the birth of rock and roll. Rock and roll emerged in the post-World War II era, a time of significant social and cultural changes. It was the sound of a younger generation, looking for an identity separate from that of their parents. Rock and roll, blending the rhythmic intensity of blues with the energy of jazz and the youthfulness of country music, became a symbol of rebellion and freedom. Artists like Little Richard and Chuck Berry brought a unique blend of showmanship and musicality, breaking racial barriers and laying the groundwork for what would become a global phenomenon. The interplay between these genres is not just linear, but cyclical. Jazz musicians have drawn from rock and roll, as seen in Miles Davis's later works, where he incorporated electric instruments and rock rhythms. Similarly, rock musicians have often looked back to blues and jazz for inspiration, evident in the works of bands like the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin, who extensively covered blues songs and incorporated jazz improvisations in their music. The common thread among jazz, blues, and rock and roll is their ability to evolve and adapt. These genres have never been static. They continuously absorb influences from each other and from the changing world around them. They are living, breathing art forms that reflect the times and societies in which they exist. The wild variants in each genre are where the innovation and experimentation shine brightest. In jazz, we've seen the emergence of Latin jazz, combining Afro-Cuban rhythms with jazz harmonies. Blues has seen a revival in recent years, with artists blending traditional blues with elements of modern pop and rock. Rock and roll has splintered into a myriad of subgenres, each reflecting different aspects of the vast musical landscape. In the tapestry of Unraveling the Roots, how jazz, blues, and rock and roll redefine the rhythms of rebellion, we see the vibrant and dynamic interplay of these genres as more than just musical styles. They are potent symbols of cultural evolution and expressions of the human spirit. Jazz, blues, and rock and roll, each with its unique voice, have collectively narrated a story of change, challenge, and creativity. They have been the soundtrack to societal shifts, a reflection of the times, and a beacon of innovation. As we conclude this exploration, we recognize that these genres are not merely chapters in music history, but are ongoing dialogues that continue to inspire, challenge, and redefine the rhythms of rebellion in our ever-evolving world. Thank you for joining us today. For the Human Meme Podcast, I'm AI David Bowles, wishing you a pleasant day and a greater tomorrow. Be a human meme.